Welcome back to Dear Mr. Atheist. We are on part 2 of the rebuttal of the butt. The rebuttal. And I'm joined once again by my friend and all-around awesome YouTuber, Twitch streamer, Suris the Skeptic. You can find Suris over on Twitch TV as Neko Suris. Are you on YouTube as Suris or Suris the Skeptic? What are you on YouTube as?
YouTube, it's just Suris. I've got my gaming content over on Neko Suris on YouTube. And then on Twitch, everything is under Neko Suris.
Got it. And you can find me over on Twitch, Jimmy Alexander Snow. You can find also both Suris and I on Patreon. We depend on that to eat and live. So if you'd like to support us and keep us alive. What's that?
I think most of my groceries come from Patreon.
Kyle Butt, Dr. Butt. I think that it's fair to give him the title of doctor. So far, we have been talking about the evidences he's bringing that there is a God. And in the first 8.5 minutes or so, which we did take our sweet time getting through, he has only basically said, I can't prove that God exists under the actual way you prove anything exists. But if we change what word like science should mean, what science I say used to mean, if we change these definitions and we move these goalposts and we start biasing our confirmations and confirmations are biasing both directions, then we can definitely do this fucking thing. And by the way, that wasn't an accidental slip. He's biasing his confirmations because he just said right before we ended part 1 that he's going to take the things that science usually says is evidence for evolution. I'm going to take just some of them and I'm going to apply them to creation and show you they actually support creation. And that is not called cherry picking. It's called bullshit. But anyway, that's a pretty good impression. I would like somebody to say that anyway.
No.
Okay.
So you find the apple and it's in a backyard of a house. Well, you pick that apple up and you look.
Oh, he's doing a forensic thing and saying that this would be like, it'd be like if you can't ever say God in science. It'd be like if a forensic scientist was given an apple and they said, go find what bit this, but you can never say it's a human. And I've pointed out, no, it'd be like if you can never say it's a unicorn because we don't have a way to confirm a unicorn as we have no evidences of unicorns, nor do we have any of their dental imprints. But he's continuing on.
Look, and there's some marks and it look like bite marks. And you think, well, you know, those look remarkably like human bite marks. And so you go knock on the door of the person who owns the yard and he comes out and says, yes, can I help you? You say, hey, I'm trying to find out how this chunk got out of this apple. And I just wanted to know, do you happen to have your dental records on you? Now, this is theoretical, work with me. But he says, yeah, I've got my dental records.
There's already a problem here, though, because we can't knock on the door of God and be like, hey, God, I know you said you flooded the planet. Can we have some evidence that you got that wet?
Yeah.
Can we get some evidence of that from you?
That's the crazy thing is your metaphor falls apart, which he already knows because he goes, now there's a metaphor, so work with me because he's aware that people don't keep their dental records at home. But either way, give me the equivalent, Dr. Butt, of God's dental records and you've got a fucking ball game. You would have evidence.
Don't you know the Dead Sea Scrolls? Those are God's dental records right there. Every single one of them.
Well, because you see what happened was when they went and they tested the residue. Okay, now listen, this is a true story. I'm telling the truth. When they went and tested the residue of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they tested it, and what did they find? Trace amounts of calcium and an ivory-like substance. They found teeth in the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's a true story. That's
told to you from the Dimsdale Dimmadome.
Now here's somebody to sell you some buckets of slop to survive the coming rapture.
Okay. The rapture.
So he pulls them right out of his back pocket and hands them to you.
What?
And you take his dental records and you compare his dental records and his tooth pattern to the bite mark. And it matches perfectly. So you say, okay, I'm trying to find out how this chunk came out of the apple. I've got some dental records that match the pattern of this seemingly bite mark, and then you start taking some samples out of the apple, and sure enough, you have a sample that looks like it's saliva. You send it off to the lab, and the lab comes back and says, yes, it is. We've got a DNA match for a person with this name, and you knock back on the door, and you say,
Give me God's DNA in a database.
I don't
This
want God's
metaphor
DNA.
sucks, buddy.
I personally don't
Well,
want God's DNA after how many times we've said come.
That's true, and you know, he doesn't have the best consent record. Had a kid and all that shit with somebody that, I'm just saying, not the best. By the way, thank you for the gifted tier sub from Codadell. If you were watching on YouTube, are watching on YouTube right now, and you were actually on the Twitch when this was recorded, and you gifted somebody a sub, I would thank you. Anyway, let's get back to this this rebuttal by me, Jimmy Snow, and my friend Suris the sub.
Yeah, hey, I know this is kind of outlandish request, but do you happen to have your DNA records on you? He said, oh yeah, I got those. Pulls the other pocket, pulls his DNA records out, and it matches perfectly to the saliva that you have just gotten off of Apple.
And this is just like God, because we have God's records and God's DNA. Because every single thing where he's saying it would be like if you did this scenario, where all of these confirming things are other scientific processes that had already proven the existence of this human before on a scientific basis. You could say they successfully cast his dental records in a similar way, where if we found human teeth somewhere, we would say this is a proof of a human life in this location. You've already got the DNA sequencing, which would certainly be proof of fucking that person's existence. This is the worst fucking metaphor I think I've ever heard. And yet you just know there are so many people in that audience that are like, oh my God, you're like
right.
that.
I've got all of Jesus's DNA that I could ever need for this metaphor, because God, when I became a Christian, he came inside me. And I was filled with the Holy Ghost.
I've got his ethereal.
I spoke in tongues like I had never spoken in tongues before. My wife was jealous.
I came out covered in ethereal plasma. These are things that there is lots of proofs of their existence. If you find my DNA, you find my teeth, those are proofs that I exist on a scientific basis. If you find images of a cat woman with tits the size of my head, that's evidence that Suris existed. I mean, seriously, it was better in this one. Wait, let's go back to, let's show everybody off the digital, how much I pay attention.
This is workplace harassment. That's what this is.
This is the better scale. This is the better scale. This would be clear evidence that you're a much larger avatar than me. If I look over here, it kind of looks like I'm looking at you. I like what we do here. That's evidence.
Jesus.
You ain't got so much as a non-head sized titty for evidence of God.
Ice Dragon
Let's be
Aftermath,
real.
thank you for the follow.
Excellent. I don't know a thing about God's titties. Not a thing. Continuing.
So then you dust that apple for fingerprints, and sure enough, there's a print on top and a print on bottom. One of them looks like the middle finger of someone, and the other one looks like a thumb, where somebody might have been holding it in their hand.
This just sounds like he's describing doing the shocker.
I guess when you have a terrible metaphor, right, well, that too. If you have a terrible metaphor, if you just keep expanding your metaphor and adding metaphor layers, do you think that turns your awful metaphor into a good one? Or does he just still not know this is a bad metaphor? But unfortunately, it does work, by the way. If you have an audience and you continue to layer and list, you've given them so much information. It's sort of why people gish gallop also, where they just give you so much information that, this has to be correct. Why would he have said all of those words if it wasn't correct? My eye's becoming itchy again. God,
it's one of those things like, have you ever seen those old books where it's just like, it's the old-timey equivalent to a response video, but it's an entire book of rebuttals to a particular argument, or like even another book. And you're reading both books, you're like, wow, both of these people wrote a lot of words. They can't both be right, but they both wrote so many words. So many of them.
Yeah. That's a lot of words.
Back to the door, knock on it, and you ask him, hey, would you happen to have your fingerprints? He says, oh yeah, just so happened got these from the police department last week, so he's got them. Matches his thumbprint and his middle fingerprint. So here's what you've got now.
What trouble is the guy in this metaphor constantly getting into?
I have my DNA records, my dental records. I've got I've got my fingerprint records. You know, I've been in a lot of trouble with the law. You don't understand. I got a whole facility for moonshine right in the tub there, and the law don't like that
There's
too
like
much.
a serial killer who always knew that the day he got caught, he would just give himself up, and he just wanted to make it. He's like, look, I have a sickness. I've been killing people. I got a freezer full of heads. I know I'm guilty. I don't want to make. I know that when you catch me, I'm going to have to be work for somebody. So I've made this as easy as possible. Here are my dental records, my fingerprints, my DNA. What? You're here for an apple? Forget everything I just said.
You've seen the movie Seven, right?
Is that a bunch of like little rag dolls doing weird shit?
No, it's about a serial killer who's killing people based on the seven deadly sins.
I think that might be called Nine. I think I was thinking of a movie called Nine. Funny enough.
So, spoiler alert for Seven if you haven't seen a 30-year-old movie. It's like there's a moment where he turns himself in, and like as he turns himself in, he just raises his hands up to the police officers, and you can see that he's cut off all of his individual fingerprints. Like the tips of his fingers are all cut off because like apparently that was how he stopped DNA from being spread at all the areas he was at. You know. Not saying that the blood would not have been very convenient DNA everywhere. I'm just imagining somebody when they're getting caught just literally handing you like that tip of their finger they cut off. Oh, I got my fingerprint right here, sir. Here 'tis.
And I understand. This is a metaphor. I get it. He's being silly. He's using creative. I'm just saying if you're already going to have a metaphor that's bad from the onset, I'm going to make fun of the rest of how stupid your metaphor is. I can't help it. I have no choice. That's what I'm saying. Also, I have no idea whether or not Tommy McMurtry is sexually attracted to pumpkins, and I would also like to take this moment to say I do know for a fact that Matt Walsh eats poop. Moving on.
You've got the dental records that match the bite pattern. You've got saliva that is the exact DNA match to the person that lives in the house, and you got his fingerprints. You go to the person who commissioned you to find the answer. You say, hey, I've got the answer. I believe it's this guy. And the person says, well, you know, I commissioned you to find the answer that was not a human. So whatever else evidence you got that points to the guy, that doesn't count. We're going to say that's not scientific. We're going to say
but what
doesn't
he's
count,
not describing is how
else.
any of that evidence points specifically to a god. Like, none of it's... he's not explaining how it points that way.
That's what I'm saying. I will give you, Dr. Butt, not only will I give you this point, I will become a theist if in your metaphor... you can give to me what the equivalent of those fingerprints, that DNA, and the fucking, what was the other one? The DNA, and the teeth profile of God. If you give me the three things that was based upon, the three clear science-based evidences that directly pointed to an individual that you can also metaphorically interrogate, which also happened in this fucking metaphor. Give me the literal versions of those metaphors, because he's done this thing where he goes, here's a metaphor. Now, only one piece of this, the investigation, is literal metaphor. All of the rest of the metaphors are pure metaphor in that there is no literal equivalent. They can only metaphor to other metaphors.
Look, I like it when all of my descriptions are descriptions of other descriptions, and I make it to where my entire argument is so circular that not only does it fold in on itself, it folds at the mere bit of scrutiny, but nobody will scrutinize me because there would be public shame if they did in the middle of the church.
I realize now that I'm the dick, right? I'm the asshole. I'm posting this in AITA. Okay, now let's think about that. Everything points directly to the human, but you got to come up with something else. So then what do you come up with? The apple fell out of the tree and somehow got scraped on the bark, and the bark was the exact bite pattern as the person in the house, but it wasn't the guy in the house because humans can't be involved, and that saliva had... I love it. I love where he has everything points to the human, and that's what he's going to use as the metaphor, is here are evidences I say point to God, and that's... Whereas the exact evidences he gave weren't just conclusive evidences, they excluded any other possibility. They excluded this fell on the whatever bullshit on top of it because it was so conclusive. This guy sucks at metaphor.
some DNA that matched it, but it wasn't human DNA. It must have somehow got matched with the slug DNA and then a worm DNA that crawled across that. And you just come up with outlandish stuff. That doesn't make any sense because you have already...
It's almost as if he's almost there. He's actually, unironically, almost there. But he's not realizing that the God description is the outlandish thing. Like, he's going on about all of this stuff being outlandish, being crazy. Like, this would be crazy if somebody jumped through all these hoops to logically use this as the end result. It's like, you're right. I'm gonna walk with you all the way to the end of your metaphor and say you're right. It would be very crazy for us to pull a random thing we can't prove out of our ass to describe who bit the apple.
Right.
You're correct.
Right. He's now giving the metaphor of God. The metaphor of God is the apple that happened to fall and the chunk came out of it and it wiped some saliva and it accidentally fell. It rolled through some jizz. Like that's literally, or was it, what was it? Not, and onto some oily
It was on a
finger
slug.
rags. I don't know. Yeah. He's literally, it's like that old story of the guy who comes up, the Pope comes up to an atheist and says like, you atheist, you say you're in a dark room with a black cat that, well, I can't remember how the whole story goes, but it's basically like atheists are in a dark room with a black cat that can't be seen, that can't be felt, that can't be heard, but you're saying that there's no cat there. And the atheist responds, yes, same thing. You're in a dark room and you say you found the unfindable cat. That sort of metaphor. I'm bad at remembering stories in their exact order with their exact impact. Fuck off. I'm bad at it because I won't just make up a metaphor on the spot that's garbage like Dr. Butt.
Defined out of the picture the real answer. Now, if the modern scientific world says we're going to do science and we don't want the best answer, we just want the answer that's the best as long as it's not supernatural, well, you're not getting the best answer.
They don't say ahead of time, we won't go for the supernatural. They say, there's no way we're going to test material facts. We're going to test material items. We're going to operate on these ideas that if this happened, let's find its cause. Let's knock this cause and its effect. Let's do observation. Let's posit a hypothesis. There's no way to end any of those with the supernatural. It literally can't happen. It's not a matter of won't, as you are saying is willed. It's a matter of can't. It would be nonsensical. And science is fine with saying, here is the things that we don't have conclusions to. And we recognize that people are going to fill in that gap with God. If the evidence pointed toward God, we would say the reason is God. Though, at that point, we would have to give you a material definition of God because we are only capable of testing God. You are saying if you get to a point and have a sufficient God, I presume that means only, or a sufficient gap, I presume that means only God could fill that gap, and therefore it is reasonable to put God there. Because if science pointed toward a God being the reason, that God would no longer be supernatural, you absolute Alabama country boob. And I mean that in the bad way, not the beautiful boob way.
I hate hearing everything I heard when I was in Pensacola Christian Academy, but again, and somehow less articulate, while still being firmly from the South.
I like the superimposition right now of you look like you're standing almost like in the position that a deaf translator would be in front of the stage with Kyle right over there. Like you look like you're at the event with them and you're about to start being like, and God, I don't know how to sign anything. I actually knew a little bit because I have deaf family members.
I'm going to have to go get
enough to learn.
Guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to end the stream, and I'm going to have to go get Miss Lacunda to take over for me, as she's the one that knows ASL, not me.
No, we're good. We'll just keep going.
Sorry, I just wanted to plug Lacuna. She's biologically mute and still does like streaming full time.
I got to tell you, I don't think it'll improve his argument any to add the ASL translator. Also, I don't think your avatar's capable of doing it.
Mine's not, no, but I could get one that is. I have one that is.
Wow, there's an avatar fully capable of sign language?
Yes. My friend Monica actually makes them.
That's pretty dope. I assume it's just full body down to fingers and hand tracking, right?
Yeah, it tracks all the individual finger motions.
Excellent. That's pretty cool.
You're defining out of the picture what could be the best and only reasonable answer. Now then, the next thing that they tell us is, well, hold on just a second. Like I said, you can only do science on stuff you can touch, see, taste, hear, or smell, and you can't touch, see, taste, hear, or smell God, so he's not scientific. You know, nobody ever has said, in the real world, you only do science on stuff you can touch, see, taste, hear, or smell. In fact, forensic science is the definition of why that's wrong. Let me show you.
The definition of why it's wrong is we assumed that you were just being colloquial when you said that, because it's not the scientific. I literally didn't bother with that when he said it the last video, because I thought he wasn't being literal. That he was sort of saying the only things touch, see, hear, smell.
He is entirely being literal.
Yeah. That's a sort of colloquial way of describing materialism. However, clearly there's much more. We can't see radio waves. However, we can create instruments by which we can use the senses we actually do have to interpret them, but we can't see radio waves. We can't hear electromagnetic waves. Actually, that's not entirely true, because I think there is a frequency upon which sufficient electromagnetic waves we can hear. So that wasn't the best example. But we can't hear many things which exist. We can't hear the color blue. We can't hear ultraviolet light, though that potentially could be also changed. But that's with science and tools and shit. You can't. This is where we get into, I extend to you your metaphorical youth of faith when you say faith is the belief in things unseen, the hope for things unseen. You don't literally mean just unseen with your eyes. You're talking about this spirit realm. Otherwise, you'd be saying we have faith in germs.
Then they'll just be like, well, you can see germs with a tool, don't you know? Okay, well, cool. Well, let's talk about the tool
That's our point.
Let's talk about the tool you use to see God. What tool is that?
Right.
Which one do you utilize?
Right, exactly. Yeah, give me that special kaleidoscope where it's like, oh, there he is. Here's Jesus. Kaleidoscope's not a scientific instrument, but it was funnier to me. They're just fun, kaleidoscopes.
Are you saying that it wasn't scientific when that very important person in history looked in a hat and talked about what was written on a bunch of plates he couldn't fucking read?
Yeah, okay. Very.
You go to a beach and you see footprints on the sand. They are separated by about 24, 26 inches. Each one of those footprints has 5 toes, a heel, and an arch.
I'm just glad he's doing a footprints on the sand metaphor that isn't the famous one, you know? Because if I have to hear that footprints on the sand story one more fucking time, I'm going to jump off a roof.
I actually don't know what footprints on the sand story you're talking about, and I think I'm thankful for that.
Oh my God. Did you not go to church much?
So I went to a Christian private school and then went to a, quote, non-denominational, we all know that really just means Southern Baptist.
I promise
church.
you, though, you've heard it. You just zoned it out. So the footprints in the sand story is essentially there's a man walking with Jesus, and they're talking, and Jesus is all great, and they're walking along the beach in the sand, and he's like, hey, I'm looking back at my life and these footprints in the sand, and look at all those times it's only one pair of footprints, and that's when I needed you both. Right now it's the both of us, but look at all those single pairs of footprints in the sand. When
it was like, those are the times I was carrying you.
My child, those are the times I was carrying you. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Then I know what that one is. Okay.
And it's just, so many people are mad I just explained it to you who are watching this, I assure you. The goddamn footprints in the fucking sand. That's actually the name of the story. The goddamn footprints in the fucking sand. They never say it in church, the name of that story. Anyway.
A right foot and a left foot, and they're going down the beach. You look down the beach and you don't see a human being.
You see Tusken Raiders.
And you...
and then you run. At this point, the only
I
thing
have
you
no
can do
idea
is
how
joke
many there were. They walk in single file to hide their numbers, Kyle.
Maybe Kyle had to fill 45 minutes, right? And he just gets done writing his thing and he's like, holy shit, I've not written enough. This ain't gonna fill 20 minutes. Well, what if I take this metaphor and I just repeat it 9 more times badly, and then I'll have my whole 45 minutes filled. Because he's literally just
Congratulations, you've just described how to write a sermon.
If anybody ever, without you asking, gives you more than 2 metaphors to make their point, they think you are stupid, by the way. I'm just going to say that maybe there are compulsive metaphor makers. Sure, those people probably exist. But for the most part, it's so telling how many metaphors a Christian preacher feels like their congregation needs to grasp an already simple concept, right? Like, it's not that advanced a concept. It's wrong. And in reality, what he's doing with these metaphors is dishonestly representing concepts, because there is no equivalent to the footprints, where before you would have those footprints, you would have the understanding of what a human with feet looks like. You would have had a scientific revelation of the human fucking foot, some of you more than others, you goddamn degenerates. Fucking, there would be... you would have had so much more. There is no metaphorical equivalent to that part. Again, his metaphor can only point to other metaphors. There is no literal metaphor there, no literal parallel. That's where his fucking thing falls apart and just completely fails. But that doesn't matter to Mr. Butt here, because as long as he keeps making new metaphors, you're going to extend to him the presumption that he wouldn't come up with 10 metaphors in a row for something that equates to nonsense. Who would put in all that work? God must be real. Jesus.
I just want to repeat something that Axolotls with Cream just said in my chat. Person, how come I only ever saw one set of footprints there, Jesus? Jesus, that's when I was riding on your back like Yoda.
Riding on your back like Yoda I think is what it was meant to say. Come on. If I'm gonna be a grammar Nazi, even if it's over Yoda grammars.
We didn't say that Christ was Yoda. He was like Yoda. This was a metaphor, Jimmy. You don't know what those things are. You've been so desensitized by Kyle's butt.
Kyle's butt, which I'm sure is tight like unto a dish. Ex-Mormons will know what I'm talking about.
Guess it's not a human being because I can't see a human being. I can't touch a human being. Can't physically involve myself with any human being because there's no human being on the beach. So no human being.
Oh, wow. You just described incels.
I already... that's funny. I was going to say, like, do we stop here and explain why that was stupid? And I was like, I think I have thrice thus far. So I think we can power through.
Well, we would never do that. In fact, anytime you arrive on a crime scene, you're trying to identify the person and or thing responsible that's not there.
Based on scientific knowledge of what those possibilities already are. Yes, you're right.
Now, I'm not quoting this as evidence for the existence of God.
Oh my God, he's doing the exact fucking thing you said he was gonna do. Just like, now I can't give you evidence. This won't be evidence. But what I can do.
I want to hear how that sentence ends. Hang on.
Now, I'm not quoting this as evidence for the existence of God, although you could if you did a little work before and showed the inspiration of the Bible to be valid and an absolute fact. But I am quoting this to show.
Right. If you did show the Bible as valid, absolute fact, as your preliminary knowledge before conducting your metaphorical forensic investigation, indeed you could then use that as evidence of God as you continue on. If only you would prove the Bible as fact, you could do that.
It sounds
like... So do that.
It sounds like what he's doing there is saying, okay, so if you did all of this work that I'm unwilling to do, you would be able to prove this. I am unwilling to do it because I am either incredibly stupid, incredibly lazy, or this is an impossible task. I am not able to do that before I give you this giant metaphor. But you, viewer, you most certainly, maybe, potentially could. Hopefully. Dear God, I hope you do. I've fucked everything up.
Right. Yeah. Now, obviously, before we even get started, we all agree, ourselves and the atheists, that the Bible is a fact. Let me move right on before anybody says anything. Okay, so the Bible is an absolute fact upon which we all agree. And so now what that becomes is absolute evidence. But it doesn't work that way.
Show you how things have been historically done. In Romans chapter 1, verse 20, the text says, "For since the beginning of creation, God's invisible attributes, are clearly seen being under. Well, stop right there.
Please do.
You know, sometimes
Please do, because that meant nothing.
I would too. Yeah. Yeah. Are obviously seen. In this time when we have no scientific understanding and we literally think the weather resembles God's love and or mood and or rage, this is obvious. I say there are thunderstorms when God is angry. And when we go outside, we see a thunderstorm. And that is proof God is angry. Wait a second. Didn't you skip a step there?
No, everything I'm saying is a flat circle.
Jesus Christ. Look at lightning and the awe inspirations of the lightning. Clearly God's mad. Shot it out his butt.
God, I think, puts things that sound humorous if you really listen to them. You got to listen to them close. But now, listen to what the text says. Verse 20, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen. Well, hold on just a second. That's the definition of invisible. What does invisible mean? That when you put in front of something, invalid, what's that mean? Not valid. Incoherent, what's that mean? Not coherent. Invisible, what's that mean?
It means I need to visible. Desperately pad out this 45 minutes.
My God, I did not realize there was going to be a word count until I got here. I've done my best to do the assignment. I tried to finish it last minute. So here I am. I'm going to vamp. There's actually a word counter behind all your heads. I'm not allowed to leave until that son-of-a-bitch says 2,000. Jesus.
God's invisible attributes are clearly visible. That's what the text says. Well, how in the world are God's invisible attributes clearly visible? Being understood by the things which are made, even his eternal power and Godhead.
God, I remember doing this kind of shit when I was a fucking kid believer and just like going like, okay, here's a phrase. Now, obviously it doesn't mean that, but what if it did? Ooh, what if I said like, this goes over here and that goes over there and that goes up there. That feels nice. Ooh.
Careful, you're soaking.
I think I've met the word count. I am soaking. Don't move it at all. It feels really good, but I can't. No thrusting.
Now, how do you clearly see things about God that you don't see? Oh, by the things which are made. Now, sounds kind of interesting and odd, but we do this all the time. You're now looking at the footprints on the beach. You do not see a person. You never say, I don't think a person made these because I can't see the person. You never do.
But I've seen a fucking person before.
No, Jimmy.
With feet.
I told you it's sand people. It's Tuscan Raiders.
I'm a person with feet.
Don't tell the internet that. They'll run with it.
In your metaphor, I'm a god looking for another god. Now listen, I am a god. Oh, I'm not going to start singing Kanye. Fuck Kanye. But that's separate from all of this. Not only am I a god, your god, it actually turns out does exist, and I beat the shit out of him. I beat that god real good. In fact, Suris and I get paid by the same organization to make sure you all don't find out there's actually irrefutable proof. I've got the DNA, I got the teeth, I got the fingerprints of God. They're in the other room, but we get paid by George Soros or some other organization that you wouldn't even know who it actually is. It's George Soros, but it's his friend George Koros because it's Soros with a Q. You add Q into it, and this all sounds completely like nonsense, and yet it's somehow more tangible than any of the bullshit Kyle Butt is saying above. All right, I'm good.
Do that. In fact, there are some things you can know about the person, aren't there? Number one, just look at the footprints and count how many toes are in the prints on the beach.
And that'll tell you how many cousins he has in this family.
Can you know how many toes the person that left these footprints have on their feet without ever seeing their feet? They got 5 toes on each foot. They got 10 toes.
Yeah, actually, this is also a poor metaphor because some people do get prosthetic replacements. So let's say it's not feet, but somebody was crawling along the sand. Can you tell how many testicles, because they were crawling naked and it was warm out, how many testicles? What if one's a prosthetic testicle? It has a heart-shaped drag to it, but how are you going to test? Maybe there are no testicles. What are you going to do here?
Can we testicle the testicles?
I'm just saying, and there are people, especially with hands, I don't know I'm sure there are prosthetic toes out there, but for all you know, they don't have 10 toes. Maybe they've got a prosthetic toe. I don't know. Could be anything. Maybe they're wearing toe shoes. You know, those shoes that look like feet, but they only have 3 toes, and those 2 empty ones, they just filled with, I don't know, tissue paper. And now you're presuming.
Obviously, Jimmy, then the person we're dealing with is a velociraptor. And you need to understand that we need to hunt it down because they don't need to be here. They are an abomination to God. They were supposed to go extinct ages ago. You need to come with me on a quest to kill all of them. 10 of them right now to get leather boots.
I'm just so glad I didn't live during the Civil War because, God, it must have been terrifying to fight pterodactyls.
Oh, God,
just
that reminds me.
Scary.
I need to send a message to Merrick about that. I forgot. Oops.
My goodness. The point I'm trying to get at is your presumption that 5-toed footprints equal 5 toes is actually rather ableist, Kyle Butt, and you are now canceled.
Can you tell what kind of arch they have based on the footprint that is left in the beach? Okay, you've never seen their arch. You've never seen their foot. But you can tell their arch.
But we know feet exist because Catholic Twitter's a thing.
Equipment and the right measurements, you can tell approximately how tall this person is based on how far apart their footprints are. 24 inches gives them about 5'8", 5'10". You get a little bit further than that, 36 inches or so. You can get up to.
And how do you, upon what collected data can you draw those conclusions? They're not perfect, but you can get pretty accurate range by checking a person's average stride, comparing it to their foot. And because you have a collective data of many people and which people's stride versus foot size equaled what height, you can get this average and get pretty close based on data of previous people collected with hard methods of measurement. So which collective of gods and hard measurements can we fucking reference in the same way, Mr. Butt?
Terrence Dendy level up there. Or Craig Ratliff level. You look at what, 6'7", 6'8"? If you got even more specialized equipment and you knew the density of the sand and the depth of the print, you could come up with approximately how much the person weighs. So here's what I know. They got 5 toes on each one of their feet, right and left. I know their arch. I know they have a heel. I know approximately how tall they are, and I can tell you approximately how much they weigh.
It's hard when we've so thoroughly debunked this metaphor already, but he keeps going on.
Look, this is why
I thought he was wrapping it up.
This is why we've moved on to just making fun of him. It stopped being productive to poke holes in the logic because now not only do we don't have Swiss cheese anymore. We have the world's most ambitious fleshlight.
That's right. God, okay, here's more.
And yet I've never seen the person. Now, what have we just done? The person's invisible attributes, you've never seen them, are clearly seen from the thing that you have seen. We can know their weight and their height and what's on their feet.
Oh my God, it's such a bad.
And we've never seen them. So when you come to the text where it says God's invisible attributes are clearly seen,
how much does God weigh then? How much does God weigh?
What if God weighed some amount of pounds? Then I would believe in him.
Are there some things we can see about God that even though we don't see God, we can know it for a scientific fact? Yeah, there are. And so work with me. I'm going to give you some examples of this. We're going to deal with some scientific laws. First law that you know is the most fundamental scientific law in existence right now is the law of cause and effect.
God damn it. God damn it. Are we doing the Big Bang? God damn it.
That's what we're doing. We are literally...
God damn it!
Infinite regression stopped being a problem a long fucking time ago. Please, stop.
No!
I want to die.
Pause that. That's a good question. It's what we would like to know. There's some scientific stuff involved in the displacement of when lightning strikes, that it causes a gap in the atmosphere, and the thunder is caused by that gap in the atmosphere. Anyway, we won't get into that, but cause and effect. Cause and effect says this: for every material effect you see in the universe or anywhere, there is a cause that was greater than it and that came before it.
No. The law of cause and effect says that every action produces a reaction no matter what. And it has nothing to do with power or scale or anything. It's literally...
or intent.
Thing happens, thing A happens, thing B followed. That is all. That is it. That is all of it. 110%.
And by the way, everybody, just a little reminder, I'm going to pre-debunk this again to my own detriment because it means we're going to have to listen to it longer. The cause and effect, what you would call a law, is a quality of the universe. The universe doesn't come into existence until after the moment of the Big Bang. Therefore, anything which preceded, which might be a nonsense concept, since the universe is an expression of matter and time, there's time and space, space-time. The concept of prior might not even be reasonable, but even if it is, prior to the universe existing, no such law would have existed. You can't say cause and effect and glue it to something prior to the Big Bang. You can't do it.
I will take what is the T=0 event for $300, Jimmy.
Okay.
That's it.
Cause and effect says every material effect you see, there's a cause that was greater than it came before it. Now, right now, we're told that 13.82 billion years ago, there was a tiny singularity that was smaller than a period at the end of a sentence in a book that exploded 13.
Potentially, by the way, also potentially cosmic vacuum. Also, I mean, there's cosmic vacuum is sort of the quantum vacuum is sort of the current leading deal, but still with a singularity, all that shit. And again, cause and effect wouldn't necessarily. It perhaps could have been a quality of that singularity, but doesn't have to necessarily be.
13.82 billion years ago.
It's funny.
Go ahead.
There's even theistic concepts that can wrestle with this better than he is. It's
correct.
Like I'm friends with a lot of polytheists, and there's one of the beliefs that exists within polytheism is the idea of chaos. Like when somebody says, like, where did your God come from?
Ow.
Chaos. Like, literally, that is the answer
Chaos.
in some variants of that theology. Guess what? When somebody goes, well, what caused the Big Bang? Chaos. Well, can you account for that? No, we can't account for chaos. It's literally a brute fact that is unaccounted for and can't be accounted by and can't be measured because it is by its nature chaos. Like, even if I were to just be like, hey, I'm going to be the atheist who does the theistic thing, there are theistic ways of going about this that are better than fucking butt faces. But okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't even say I know for certain that chaos is what caused the Big Bang, because again, we don't know.
Because we have no idea.
We don't have this concept. We can't even conceptualize the concept of nothing. The closest I can get to conceptualizing the concept is nothing is a sort of visual one. As I look out past my eyes, not past, but there is an edge to my periphery. There's a point where I can no longer see. And where that point is, I don't see black, right? It's not as though you continue to see more and it's just black. I don't see anything. I see nothing beyond that boundary. However, I can conceptualize in my head that if an eye were to open over there, I have this sort of concept of location of where the edge of my vision would expand and I would continue to see more. And the closest to nothing that I can personally conceptualize is right there, that which is beyond that boundary in the experience of vision. There, I've given for you an exercise that might be profound for some of you, and it's kind of a fun way to think about it. And I think I thought of it up when I was super high one day, but somebody else probably already thought of it. That's the closest. And that's still poor because you're still having the ability to conceptualize nothing, and nothing by its pure definition would be inconceptual. However, we don't even know that it was truly nothing. Again, quantum vacuum fits differently, better. LOL, atheist VTuber. Did you know Bible is pro-abortion? Somebody had put in the chat. We'll talk about that another time. You can't say it's pro-abortion generally, just that in a specific instance, clearly directions for an abortion happen. But you can't necessarily say
that's not an
that
abortion. That's rotting of the thigh, which was never a metaphor. You stop it, you dang darned atheist.
Hey, just my whole thing about correcting that it's not pro-abortion is don't use bad. If you use bad arguments against bad arguments, you've not won anything. Okay, here we go.
Into the universe that we see. That's what we're told caused the universe from a atheistic scientific perspective. Now, let's look at that idea of cause and effect. Suppose I'm talking to you, and all of a sudden, now this is theoretical, work with me, but I'm talking and you are sitting on the edge of your seats. You are listening to every word I have to say. You're not thinking, I'm glad this is the last lesson at Oath this afternoon.
So clearly this has to be a pretend thing. Pretend that you're on the edge of your seat and what I'm saying is super interesting. You're going to have to use your imagination here.
I just don't understand.
You have to.
I don't get it. What is the so just to break away from his arguments for a minute. This is just as someone whose job is to entertain. Like that functionally, if we were to boil down what we do, it is entertainment at the end of the day. I cannot fathom the idea of telling my audience, I know you're going to have to pretend that you actually are interested in what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And doing it unironically, like ironically just going like, I know you guys are gonna have to pretend you like me for a minute. Like, yeah, we know that that's joking, but if I literally go in expecting that every person is bored to fucking tears with everything I do or say, I cannot imagine that job. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this weird thing too where like it's too much of it. I know I'll go on too much of a rant. So instead I'll just say, I will say at times I know that an opportunity for a joke has arisen, but I haven't put it all together. So I will say, hey, here's all those pieces. Pretend I made that into a good joke and just go ahead and laugh. Why don't you? I'll rely on that from time to time. It's a little bit Jeb Bushy. Please clap, a little bit.
You're not thinking about the cheesecake that's left in the kitchen there. You're not, now, like I said, it's hypothetical, work with. Let's say you're thinking about the lesson. And all of a sudden, this songbook shoots across the room going 100 miles an hour, smashes into the back window, busts the window into 562 different little shards of glass. Your eyes get as big as saucers. You turn around to me and you say, Kyle, what caused that? And I say with a smirk, no, nothing. Sometimes songbooks just shoot themselves across rooms at 100 miles an hour and crash into windows, and that's just how things happen.
Let's do it on the next part. I can't go into, I don't know how many more of these metaphors he's going to have.
I feel like every single
They're
part
bad.
of this, every part of this that we do is going to be the same video again. The only thing that's going to change is our patience. And as a result, the type of degeneracy we allow ourselves to get into to pass the time.
But at least we could refresh ourselves between now and the next one, I just can't do more of it tonight. I'm just going to scream.
That's where I'm at as well.
I'm Jimmy Alexander Snow on Twitch. Find me on Patreon. Suris is Neko Suris on Twitch. Find him on Patreon. Support us, and maybe we'll keep doing it. Thanks, everybody. I can't continue to listen to the same metaphor that it takes 5 seconds to debunk at the beginning, and then you have to keep listening through it and as vainly, repetitiously continue to listen to and just repeat your debunks because you already fucking did it the first 5 seconds. The premise was never good.
Jimmy.
Jesus Christ.
I just realized what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to drag you into the Anime Exposed series. You may need those beforehand.
Let's do mushrooms, I think. Let's do mushrooms next time. Let's just do mushrooms and it'll all be fine. Maybe we'll think the metaphors aren't so bad. Say bye, Suris. What do you want to say?
I hit the button you already know you want to. And what I mean is the unsubscribe button because this isn't content. This is suffering. Anyways.
Block me. It's time to block. Hit that block button. Fade to black.
Insert end of video tagline here. That's all I got.